The first question is from Anthony DaCosta, and he asks, DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, is the best line of treatment just letting it take its course and light movements, or is there anything else I can prescribe to people? So this is a really good question. I don't think we still have a super great grasp on exactly what DOMS is from a physiological standpoint. I think the theory is that it's kind of like low-level damage or low-level, at least low-level sensitivity that we're perceiving from anything new. One thing that I'm more confident on is the repeated bout effect or the repeated exposure effect, meaning that if you're sore from this new thing that you were not prepared for or were not used to doing, if you repeatedly expose yourself to that thing, you will be less sore in subsequent bouts, even when increasing the volume or intensity of said thing. So, if people aren't used to doing, let's say, an RDL or like an eccentric hamstring thing, you can wreck yourself doing that. Like sets of, like 3 sets of 5 on an RDL. If somebody's never done that before, they're going to be lit up for a week after that. Or like negative pull-ups, doing like a 3 count on the way down or something like that. Your lats are lit up for days. But if you were to do that repeatedly over and over, that delayed onset muscle soreness response would decrease, and you would still even be able to build volume and intensity. And that's why it's really important in season to not subject an athlete to something new that's gonna, or at least have in mind, like, maybe we shouldn't do this if we got a game in 2 weeks and the athletes haven't done this for a few months, that type of thing. Or I'm going to do some RDLs. We haven't done RDLs in 3 months. It's in season, but we got to bye next week, so we don't have a game. And it's, we've got like 10 days or something like that. It's like maybe we'll do a little bit of that. But that's why it's important to, like, if you can start that stuff in the off season, and then if you just kind of go on a maintenance phase through the season, you can maintain those things. You don't have to be afraid of eccentric loading. And I say eccentrics just because that seems to be the thing that creates that type of muscle soreness the most. You don't have to be afraid of it, though, if you have that repeated bout effect. Now, in regards to what else people can do, I think totally anecdotally, but just making sure that they're getting their nutrition is on point, they're getting enough protein, their sleep is on point. Because I'm going to say, like, forget DOMS for a second, but just recovery in general, like pain pressure threshold and these types of things are affected with sleep deprivation. So you just want to make sure that you're nailing your nutrition and your sleep. That's probably the 2 biggest things that you can do to try to recover the quickest. The other thing is just to make note of the dosage. So, as a coach, we do our best to prescribe things that we think the athlete can handle, and we always have in our mind, like, is this going to kill the person the next day or the next few days? Like, we don't want to go there, but sometimes it happens. And so you can just kind of make a mental note. It's a retroactive thing, but if you prescribe something to an athlete and they tell you, and you've prescribed this very thing to other athletes and they handled it okay, but this particular athlete didn't, at least you have some information now. It's okay, we're not going to do more than that next time. We'll probably just repeat that thing, whatever made them sore, and then the expectation would be that they're less sore each time. I don't necessarily think that there's anything extraneous that can be done. Some would say, well, what about my foam rolling and all those types of things? I think that you would get some short-term pain perception change with that stuff, and I think there is some literature to show that foam rolling can decrease pain pressure threshold or increase pain pressure threshold. It's basically if they poke you and then you foam roll and they poke you again and then you rate it as not as uncomfortable. So if you're sore and you rolled, it would probably help, but that's going to be a short-term thing. An hour later, you'd probably feel the same. So I think then, contrast baths, hot, cold baths, these types of things can probably numb you out a little bit as well. So if you're so sore it's actually uncomfortable, those types of short-term modalities may be beneficial. No. What do you think, Jared?
I agree with all those points. I think that setting expectations, like, let's say that we're talking about someone who hasn't trained a hell of a lot, someone who's not really a seasoned athlete, don't know what DOMS is. Let them know, like, hey, you're probably going to feel pretty sore. We haven't trained in any meaningful way ever or in a while. So the next day, next few days, we can expect this. And if it happens, okay, no big deal. If it doesn't happen, great, cool. Now, whether it's a seasoned athlete or not a seasoned athlete, I think that looking at performance markers matters a lot. Just speaking anecdotally and just for myself, I know there've been some days where I just feel like absolute crap, and I go into the gym and I warm up and I feel sore for sure, and I feel more sore as I'm moving, but the strength is there, the speed is there, and I end up having a pretty damn good session. So I think that can help to inform some training decisions. I think people like Tim Gavitt and other researchers in that sort of discipline are looking heavily at what sort of external and internal markers can we use to figure out how well someone's tolerating training and responding to it. So I think DOMS matters. We want to consider it, certainly. But I also think that if you have a lot of it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't train the way you planned to. Maybe if you need to make modifications, maybe they don't need to be drastic. But yeah, in clinic too, if I get some athletes who say like, I felt really sore, what should I do? I'll tell them like, yeah, you could foam roll. You could, I don't know, put some heat or some ice or whatever you want. I mean, they're probably not going to make any sort of long-term changes. They might feel better, may feel good in the moment. And if that's no cost and you can do that at home, and I'm not telling you there's anything magical about it, then great, by all means use that. But yeah, so that's kind of what I think about that.
So to your point, it's almost like if you set, maybe there's nothing that we need to do about it. Maybe it's a thing that is supposed to be there. It's a response to training, like you said. We use it to inform our decision going forward. So to your point, if we set the expectation right away and it happens, then the athlete's not going to quit. It's not a frustrating thing because they knew it was going to happen. And then why try to take it away? Because that's like an artificial thing, like it's there for a reason. So it's either going to tell us what we were able to handle if we could have handled the previous dose, and then it will tell us what we can then handle for subsequent doses. And then when
exactly right.
Yeah, and then when it's completely gone, then we know that we can maybe push a little past the bout that made us that way. Like, let's see if we can. Yeah. We've adapted. We've quote unquote recovered. Like Mike Israetel will define recovery as the ability to repeat baseline or repeat a subsequent bout. So we could repeat the exact same bout that made us sore, and then the expectation would be we're less sore from that because we've adapted to it, or maybe we can push the envelope a little bit.
I'd agree, and I think that if we come back and repeat a bout and we have less soreness, it's an indicator that we probably could handle a little bit more, and we could also use other markers which may or may not be super accurate, but things like bar speed or RPE or other qualitative markers just to continue to inform that, because you could be a little less sore and maybe that's still the appropriate training dosage, or maybe you still feel hella sore but you can handle more. And to what you said before, I think it's congratulations, your training is what it's telling you. And it's also important, like you said earlier, to keep track of the dosage, and if it's too much, okay, make a modification, and you can do that because you know what you just did.
Yeah, and I would say I'll end with maybe you're too sore to do another training session the way that it was prescribed, like the intensity at which it was prescribed, and that may be frustrating, but you can very likely still do the exact same workout, but at much lower intensities and maybe even slower, but you can still get practice with the movement. So let's say it's you squat, bench, and dead, or it's snatch and clean and jerk. Like, you got to keep it light, but at least you're still doing the movement. You're getting some deliberate practice in at the very, very least. So still try to get into the gym, and maybe it just acts as a quote unquote active recovery, gets quote unquote blood flow to the area, which probably wouldn't hurt, and you're practicing the movement. Okay, good question, Anthony.